also have Vsin's own Zack Cohen on the show, get into some of his added futures with the Vsin NFL Betting Guide refresh out today. Vsin.com/subscribe to get the guides and everything we have to offer. So much to get to, Michael, including the fact that it is roster cutdown day. And I feel like every time I refresh my timeline here on social media, I'm seeing more notable names that are no longer on their respective rosters.
I keep looking over, and I'm on the depth charts trying to see, because they do a good job on some of these depth charts. Our lads particularly, I don't know if you look at those, they do a great job of updating the roster cuts. You can see how many rookies have made the team, and you can kind of get a feel for, okay, what does this team look like, and what kind of depth does this team have? I think it's going to be that's one of the things I love to do when you're going through this time of the year is who made the team? What surprises? How many college free agents made the team? I think that's fun.
Well, I'm going to hit you with some notable quarterback names who have been waived or cut from their respective teams, starting with Desmond Ridder, who we mentioned in hour one, Sam Hartman, as producer Elliott calls Jets legend Tim Boyle, Bailey Zappi, also waived from the New England Patriots. The Packers waived both Sean Clifford and Michael Pratt of Tulane after they, of course, traded for Titans backup Malik Willis. So a handful of notable quarterback names that some people really did believe in for a time that are no longer on a roster.
Yeah, and I think, look, just because you get waived doesn't mean you're going home, right? You're going to go the Clifford and Pratt. They'll make a decision on who they want to put on practice squad. Right now they're only carrying 2 quarterbacks on their active roster. They'll put the third on the practice squad, which is probably the smart thing to do. And so a lot of these guys that get cut, they want to get them through and put them on the practice squad and have them part of the team, but not part of the opening day rosters. These young players will be on practice. Then we'll start to see some maneuvering around.
A couple other names of note. Training camp Hall of Famer Justin Ross, Martavis Bryant, a name that'll be familiar to a lot of folks. Commanders, he is released. Allen Robinson was cut from the Giants. And how about this one, Michael? We thought that this was going to happen, but it finally did. Cadarius Toney cut from the Kansas City Chiefs.
I mean, look, let's face it. I mean, Toney was a guy that has great talent, and he really does. You cannot minimize his talent. He's fast. He's athletic. He was very good at Florida. He could do some special things. But I don't know how much he loves football. I really don't. I don't think he loves it. I don't think he wants to pour his passion into it. I think he's almost to the point where he has so much talent that it's almost boring to him. And I think Kansas City tried everywhere. They put him in the backfield, tried to make a running back because he is very good as a returner. But to me, they gave up a high draft pick for him. They invested in him, and for them to release him, it's not surprising because I just don't think he fits their culture in terms of being all in.
Last season, of course, you'll remember he injured his meniscus in the preseason, was able to, after having a little surgery, get out onto the field week 1, ended up essentially costing the Chiefs that season opener against the Lions. Then as the season went on, he was on their injury report, Michael, 19 of the 21 games counting the postseason. He played in 13 games, had just 27 catches for 169 yards and 1 touchdown.
And they needed a receiver. That's the thing. I mean, all that, they needed a receiver. They were looking for one. They had to bring Hardman back. Right? They're looking for somebody to take over, and he couldn't do it. So, look, they gave him every opportunity. And if you can't make the Chiefs' receiving room, then I hate to break the news to you. You're probably not going to make a lot of receiving. Now, some team will think they can resurrect his career.
Of course.
Which, I'm sure they probably do. But just think about it. Everybody wants to criticize Juju Smith-Schuster. They have him on the team as opposed to Toney.
Yeah, and listen, sometimes I do agree a change can do you good and a change of scenery situation, but if you can't have success on the team that's won the Super Bowl back-to-back years, then I think that says more about you than potentially the organization that you're with. But this also, to me, is interesting and shows the Chiefs, despite having wide receiver be an issue the last couple years, could be an area where they feel pretty confident in what they've got going into this season. Yes, you have Travis Kelce back. It appears based on your comments yesterday that Rashee Rice, who had an outstanding rookie season, isn't going to be suspended this year because they need to wait for that legal situation to sort itself out. So probably looking to next year for that. Juju Smith-Schuster, who they bring in, Marquise Brown when he gets healthy again. Justin Watson has a presence. So they must feel good about what they've got.
I think they do. And I think that they felt like now it's going to come down to who's going to be the returner, because Toney was good at that. Is Sky Moore going to be the returner?
Mm.
Who's going to handle the punt? Worthy can return.
Yeah, I didn't even mention Xavier Worthy. Yeah, throw that in.
Yeah, Worthy can return punts. The kickoff, I think they'll work their way through that. So when they drafted Worthy as the punt returner, that kind of was indicating to us that he really needed, Toney that is, needed to have a really good camp.
So it is roster cut down day, rosters with over 90 players getting cut down to the final 53. But it also is trade day, Michael, which leads me to what's on Michael's mind today. Why is that element of this day important?
Well, I think that, we haven't seen very many of them so far, but typically what happens is on this day, we saw it last night when we signed off, is a team will trade for a player that's going to get cut because they don't feel like they can get them through the waiver wire. And we know that over the last 5, 6, 7 years, there has been at least 25 to 35 waiver claims. So there's a lot of activity on the wire. You're not guaranteed to get your player on practice. So the trading element can come into play. Now, a lot of that being said, I don't think the trade would have anything to do with the magnitude of Brandon Ayuk. It would be everything a little less. The Browns trying to trade Jameis Winston or trying to trade Tyler Huntley. Tim Patrick of Denver trying to get traded, right? And so I think it's Ernest Jones of the Rams. They're trying to move on from him. Lower level trades, I haven't heard of one big trade, but today is usually the day where people want to start doing that.
Yeah, got to keep an eye out there. Because you mentioned the 49ers situation, I'm not going to talk about Brandon Ayuk, but
we're not going there.
But I do want to talk about Trent Williams here, Michael, because this is a player who I don't think anybody really had it on the radar that he was going to be a holdout, and now he has, and maybe ultimately it just is that he wanted to miss training camp. He knows that the 49ers hand is going to be forced and they're going to have to pay him. And San Francisco is a team that historically has gone down to the wire with some of these deals. But I'm getting to the point where I am a little bit antsy now because he is such an important piece. As we've talked a bunch about offensive lines today, our offensive, 49ers, I hate when I do that. I hate when I say our. It's not our. When the 49ers offensive line does not have him, it's problematic.
Yeah, it's a real problem. Look, I know they need Ayuk. I get that. But he's been too difficult to deal with. They're going to have to pay Trent Williams. And I think Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch both know that. I don't think there's a whole lot they can do. They need him at left tackle. They're not ready. They've improved their line only ever so slightly with the kid they drafted this year, Puna, who they think can be a really good big guard to play inside there. But that leaves a huge hole at left tackle. And if they don't fix that left tackle situation, then you got real problems because Jalen Moore's not the answer. The 21 fifth-round pick, that's not going to work out. Chris Hubbard, they've been playing over there, and he's kind of a makeshift guy. That'll be a very challenge job for them if they have to play the Jets and that pass rush of the Jets.
When you look at San Francisco this year, Michael, I feel like a common conversation is that they're not going to be as good this season. Yet they have one of the highest win totals in the National Football League. They're the only team that is favored in every single game on their schedule, despite it being one of the more difficult schedules. Big picture, what's your expectation for San Francisco?
So I've been going back and reading the Billy Walters book. Brent interviewed him for our network, one of the first interviews that he wrote. And Billy Walters, the Super Bowl loser, is 4-20 against the spread in opening weekend since 2000, right? And in his book, he talks about the Super Bowl loser. He has a .08 power rating to the spread. He lowers it. Now, what we're seeing with this 49er spread is not good for the 49ers. It was at 5.5 at one point. It was at 6. Right? The opening line, I think, was at 5.5. It might have been 6. It's all the way down this morning when I was going through my notes preparing for the show. It was at 3.5. So there's a ton of money coming in. And I think a lot of this is from Walters' book, especially the pro bettors that understand that typically the first game back from the Super Bowl loser is a little bit of a challenge. And he basically takes almost a point away from the handicap. And I think that's something you have to consider. The reality of it is Super Bowl losers are 4-20 against the spread since 2000 in week 1.
And to further support that thought, Michael, the 49ers under Kyle Shanahan in season openers have been very hit or miss what team is going to show up, let alone now the Super Bowl hangover factor that's there as well. Yes,
they were good last year in Pittsburgh, but they were not good 2 years ago in Chicago.
It's in every other year flip-flop under Shanahan so far. I was shocked the way they came out against the Steelers.
The length of the season, Stormy. I think the length of the season, he wants to start slower to get the team because it's an exhausting time.
No question about it. But Trent Williams going to be a huge, massive piece of that, arguably the best left tackle in the entire football league. And for an offense that is predicated on running the football, he's going to be needed. Brock Purdy is going to need him. So let's get this done sooner rather than later. And quite frankly, Ayuk as well. I know I don't like to talk about it, but we're at the point where I feel like I've been sold that Brandon Ayuk is going to be on the 49ers come the season officially starting. Yet we have heard no movement on that topic. So again, 49ers season win total 11.5. Let's get these guys out there. When we come back, we're going to talk quarterbacks. I mentioned this off the top. Last year, 66 different quarterbacks started games. The year before, it was 68. Quarterback depth is more important than ever. You've heard Michael's top 5 best quarterback rooms. Now we're looking at the bottom 5 worst. Stay with us right here on the Lombardi Line. We're just getting hour 2 started.
We have so much that's going to happen in the next 9 days of football.
This is real money now.
Like, I'm actually closer to the $9 million than I thought.
I don't need to win 10 times. I only need to win 1 time.
Like 2 weeks in a row, and the #1 selection in Survivor goes down.
What do? Survivor in advance.
Don't wait until fall to start betting the NFL. Get a jump start now with the Vsin NFL betting guide and get prepared for this NFL season like never before. The guide has in-depth breakdowns for all 32 teams, best bets from our Vsin experts, playoff predictions, award market previews, and more. The guide is out now, and the only way to get it is to be a Vsin Pro subscriber. Head to vsin.com/pro to sign up and join the sports betting network.
Vsin is extending our Vsin Pro Football Special. That means for $175, you'll get access to both our NFL and college football betting guides, plus so much more. With Vsin Pro, you'll receive daily picks straight to your inbox, detailed analysis on every game, and exclusive data like our betting splits to help you become a sharper bettor. Get all this for just $175 through the Super Bowl. Or try a monthly subscription and get your first 30 days for only $19. Don't miss out on this unbeatable offer. Sign up now at vsin.com/subscribe.
Elevate your sports betting game with Vsin's exclusive betting splits. Stay ahead with real-time market trends and track bet percentages on any matchup. Then uncover the edge by comparing them to the amount of bets placed to find out where the sharp money is headed. Upgrade to Vsin Pro to access betting splits, live odds, line moves, power ratings, and in-depth game analysis. Go to vsin.com/pro to join Vsin, the sports betting network.
is the Lombardi Line with former NFL executive Michael Lombardi. Now here is your host, Stormy Buonantony, on Vsin, the Sports Betting Network.
We're back rocking and rolling on a Tuesday edition of the Lombardi Line. Michael out at his office in Jersey. I'm live in downtown Las Vegas, Circa Resort and Casino. We are talking quarterbacks here earlier this month. Michael and Femi, which we're going to miss Femi so much, by the way. I haven't had an opportunity to say that on the program, but congrats to him and his new opportunity with BetQL. But we miss him so much here on the Lombardi Line and the GM Shuffle family. But you two, when you were on the program earlier this month, broke down the top 5 quarterback rooms in the NFL. Kansas City, Cleveland, Houston, Cincinnati, and Miami. Today, we're going to do the complete opposite of that. And we're going to look at the quarterback rooms that we anticipate struggling the most, don't have depth, all of those things, which from top to bottom, we're going to start at 28 and then work our way down to 32 for the bottom 5 quarterback rooms. Who do you have at 28, Michael?
Well, I have New England at 28. I mean, you could these 5, you could throw them in a hat and jump them up because I'm not sure any of them are, when you're looking for a quarterback, you're looking out. New England's 28 because Drake May offers some sense of hope, based on what he's done this preseason. His accuracy obviously needs to improve, his awareness, playing, all those things. But, you can see why he was the 3rd pick in the draft. He's big, he's strong, he can run. He seems like a great kid. He's going to work hard. That's a good call there. Tennessee, look, there's certain teams you agree with on their player personnel beliefs, and then there's certain teams you don't. And I would say Tennessee's in that I don't. I don't see the Will Levis thing. I really don't. And maybe I'm going to be wrong, and I'll admit it. I've been wrong before, but I just don't see him. I think he's mechanical. I think he's robotic in how he plays. I think he sprays the ball way too much to really feel any sense of confidence that he's going to make great throws. So, and this quarterback room, really, I mean, he's got Mason Rudolph in there, and then they have Malik Willis. So I don't know if they have a quarterback. Now they're going down the Will Levis road. They're going all the way down. They're going to the dead end. And that may prove to be the end of this regime here, Rand Carthon, because if he's wrong on this, he's going to need a quarterback.
Michael, real quickly, before we move on that list, he also is completely tied for the rest of his life, not only to them, but to apparently Hellman's Mayo. I don't know. Did you see a couple weeks ago?
I heard.
The cologne. He has a Hellman's Mayo cologne commercial. Of course, famous in college for putting mayo in his coffee. It never ends. Anyways, I got sidetracked. Move on.
Okay. All right. Let's go to 3. The Raiders. When you have 2 of something, you have nothing.
Yep.
Look, the Raiders wanted to draft Michael Penix. I think that's clear. They wanted to try to manipulate the draft to get Daniels. That's clear. They got neither of them. They signed Gardner Minshew without a lot of people in the building know that they did sign him. I just don't see this being a long-term solution. The Raiders quarterback room, whether they start O'Connell or they start Minshew, they don't have a quarterback. And that's a problem. And they've got a good enough defense, but eventually teams are going to play them a certain way that their quarterback's going to have to show up and not make mistakes. And I don't think either quarterback can do that.
We talked about it yesterday. Jarrett Stidham, you said, probably was a mistake for the Raiders to let him go, just because this is top of mind for me. What do you think ends up happening with Jarrett Stidham? Because it's weird to see somebody lose a quarterback job and still have them be saying verbally, outwardly, I think I'm a starting quarterback in this league. I feel like that makes for a little bit of an awkward situation in the room.
Well, I mean, look, he went and signed with Denver. The Raiders made their mistakes on this. There's no question. They should have signed him immediately, but they didn't. They kind of played around with it and didn't do what they needed to do. But I would say this. I think, to me, Stidham's not going to – I don't think Sean's just going to let Stidham out there. I think if somebody calls him, because he knows that the Raiders would probably go after him. So Sean's going to hold on to him. He's got another year of his contract. Why not?
No. Raiders, of course, opening the season with the Chargers. Number 31 of 32 worst quarterback rooms in the league. You've put who?
The Minnesota Vikings. I mean, really, Sam Darnold, and we got Nick Mullins. Can it get worse than that? I mean, Sam Darnold, okay. But Nick Mullins is the backup. Jared Hall is the third. I'm not liking that room at all. Now the only good thing about this room, unlike the Raider room, is there's really not a cap money. The Raiders room doesn't have much cap money. All these teams here have very little cap money in their quarterback room, except for without further ado, the worst quarterback room in the league, the New York Football Giants, who allocate 19% of their cap to the quarterback. And their quarterbacks aren't good. So when you're given 19% and you have the 32nd back quarterback room, what does that tell you about your team?
Michael, I can't help but giggling here real quickly just because as you were talking about the Vikings, you're like, can it get any worse? Well, clearly it has because they're 31 of 32 and you have the Giants here dead on about the impact on the cap for sure. But then you go out and you get Drew Lock to bring him in to be your backup because you do have a quarterback in Daniel Jones who has had issues, who has injury history, significant injury history in the recent past. Then he gets injured. So then you're left with Tommy DeVito.
I mean, it goes from bad to worse. And then the fact is, you didn't even mention it. They're paying Daniel Jones $40 million. Like, you don't pay somebody $40 million and think you still have a need. You're paying $40 million to solve a need. You're not paying $40 million to get a need. That's what I don't get. I love it today. Who said it today? I was doing Tony Rizzo's show in Cleveland, and he said, yeah, we have a caller calls in and said Lombardi hates the Giants. Can I explain? I don't hate the Giants, but when you're 7-31 against the two best teams you have to beat, how do you love the Giants if you're a fan? Like, how do you think that that's good? We have a scoreboard in the National Football League. I know this is a shocker to most fans. A scoreboard, and it has a one-loss record attached to it. This is a horrendous team. They've got a 36% win percentage. What do you want me to do? Tell you they're great? Tell you they're going to be fine? Everything's perfect? I mean, seriously, we're a betting network. You want to bet on Daniel Jones?
Michael, I genuinely believe that Giants fans see that season 2 years ago in Brian Daboll's first year as a head coach, and they think that was not a fluke, that was real, and that's who this team is and what they're going to be, and they're just going to build on it. Yet we have the evidentiary support that that's not the case, and they just can't wrap their heads around it.
No, they can't. And I think, to me, what happens is, Stormy, is people fall in love with a little success. That year, they didn't beat anybody. They couldn't come close. They couldn't come close to beating the Cowboys. They couldn't come close to beating the Eagles. I mean, they couldn't. So I don't understand it. Like, you get measured by beating good teams. You don't get measured by barely beating the Houston Texans because Davis Mills turns the ball over on every possession in the second half. Like, come on now.
And that's why two of my bets in the guide, which are available now when you are a Vsin Pro subscriber, vsin.com/subscribe. We have the original guide from the offseason and then a refreshed guide that came out today with the preseason now in the past, getting you set for week one and some additional futures, things that all of our hosts and handicappers have added in pocket. I have added the Giants to be the worst offense in the National Football League this year. It's 10-1 proposition. And in the previous edition of the guide, I have Daniel Jones under 16.5 touchdown passes, basically just betting on him to do what he has done every season since his rookie year. But anyways, neither here nor there.
Why deal with facts?
But yeah, no point in that, Michael. But I had one more follow-up question here real quickly about the Minnesota Vikings. Where do you think that their quarterback room would have ranked had J.J. McCarthy not gotten injured? Would they still be in this bottom five?
I think they'd probably be 27th or 28th, and New England would move down.
Okay.
Because we don't know about J.J. McCarthy yet. We're not sure. We haven't seen that yet. No, I didn't put the Washington Commanders on there because I think with Mariota has played, and I think Daniels will be a good player. I think they would be, all the rookie, like Denver would be probably right where New England is, it would go, all the rookie quarterbacks who are starting. That would be the list. I mean, look, I don't think the Colts quarterback room is great, but they got Flacco. Flacco threw for 1,600 yards last year. You want to dismiss that? It was better than Watson.
I think that's good, too, that you're not throwing in a lot of these rookie quarterbacks. Similarly, how we had the Mike Sando article that came out earlier from The Athletic listing the tiers of starting quarterbacks in the NFL right now. He didn't include the rookie quarterbacks because we just don't know yet. You need to give them at least a season to get some sense of a picture for what this player is going to be in the NFL.
No question. And just have some patience. Look, I think we know who Daniel Jones is, right? We kind of have a feel for Sam Darnold. They'll make him look better. There's no question he'll look better. But, you know, we kind of know some of these teams. We know who Nick Mullins is for sure. I mean, Nick Mullins can't win a game. He's not having a hard time winning a game. So I think, to me, the unknown is you have to be patient.
For those who have forgotten, by the way, last year in 6 appearances for Daniel Jones prior to the season-ending injury, 2 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 67% completion percentage. Just throwing that out there. But again, why deal in facts, Michael? We're going to hit the break. When we come back, we're going to discuss a few more of these additional futures bets, ways that we want to look at the season now that the preseason is in the rear view. Vsin.com senior editor Zack Cohen is going to drop by and drop some knowledge. Don't go anywhere.
Vsin is extending our Vsin Pro Football Special. That means for $175, you'll get access to both our NFL and college football betting guides, plus so much more. With Vsin Pro, you'll receive daily picks straight to your inbox, detailed analysis on every game, and exclusive data like our betting splits to help you become a sharper bettor. Get all this for just $175 through the Super Bowl. Or try a monthly subscription and get your first 30 days for only $19. Don't miss out on this unbeatable offer. Sign up now at Vsin.com/subscribe. At Vsin, we've got you covered before, during, and after every game. Jumpstart your game day with Tim Murray and Jonathan Von Tobel on Vsin Primetime at 6 Eastern. They'll get you ready before the first tip, puck drop, and pitch, ensuring you're ahead of the game. Then stay in the loop during all the action with the Greg Peterson Experience at 9. And as the night wraps up, join Matt Humans and Wes Reynolds on Vsin Tonight at 11, giving you the first look at tomorrow's lines to get an edge on the next day's bets. All this and more, only on Vsin, the sports betting network.
This is the Lombardi Line with former NFL executive Michael Lombardi. Now here's your host, Stormy Buonantony, on Vsin, the Sports Betting Network.
We are 9 days out from kicking off the NFL regular season, and with that, our hardworking crew here at Vsin has put together a refreshed Vsin NFL betting guide. So updated with every team, new insights on players to watch, week one betting system, so much more. It has been a labor of love for so many people here at the network, including Vsin's own Adam Burke and Zack Cohen, who joins us now on the Progressive Guest Line. Zack Cohen, Vsin.com, senior editor. You can follow him on X at Betting on X. Yes, that is all together. And Zack, you did a deep dive into the NFC. I know you've got some updated best bets as well, but throughout your work in the NFC specifically, like what were some big takeaways that you had, and was there a team or two that your opinion might have changed on?
Yeah, I mean, I just think there's a lot that people miss. I mean, not a lot of people really want to watch the preseason. We don't know who's going to play. It can be hard to follow. And, and some players don't even play in preseason. You hear a lot about things that happened in joint practices where teams are playing their starters against one another and almost taking those games more seriously than they are preseason. So it's hard to follow. That's why the guide is so good. Adam and I did a lot of work at trying to keep people up to speed. I think one of the biggest takeaways I found, was with the San Francisco 49ers. I just think that, Christian McCaffrey, his health is a major concern for them heading into the season. Not only, is he dealing with some things, health-wise, but at the same time, Kyle Shanahan doesn't really want to use him the way that they have in years past. They want to have a lessened workload this season. I think you saw that in the preseason with Jordan Mason being a guy that they relied pretty heavily on. So I think that Christian McCaffrey is a player that I'd be looking to go under on player props this season. It also helps, that there's the Trent Williams holdout is not going very well. Apparently, it sounds like he might miss some time for San Francisco this season. I think that's their most important player, just obviously, arguably the best left tackle in football. So I think that you're seeing a situation where I think a lot of people might want to go over on McCaffrey just because of, how talented he is, how explosive he is. But I think that there are going to be some other running backs working in this year, and it might be really hard for him to, find the holes that he was last year if Williams does miss, a few weeks early in the year.
When you go back and watch the Lions 49er game, Zach, I mean, Jared Goff missed about 2 throws. Guys open in the end zone. If he makes them, they win the game. He didn't, and it cost them. But you think he could lead the league at 11-1 in passing this year. Tell us why.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of something that we've seen from a lot of our Vsin hosts and analysts. They're all playing Jared Goff to win MVP. I don't really know if Goff has the name brand to win an award like that. I think it's generally reserved for the league's, true superstars. So I took it and went a different way with it. I went with the passing yards prop. He was second in the league last year in passing yards behind Tua Tagovailoa, who seemingly threw for all of his yards in that week 1 game against the Los Angeles Chargers last year. I think Goff was a little more consistent in the way that he was putting up passing yards. And I think obviously, the big thing this year is he's going to play 14 of his first 15 games indoors. This is a guy that is really good when taken out of the elements, not having to deal with wind. I think that Jameson Williams is going to have a bigger year this year. So I think that Goff is going to put up huge numbers. I would just rather take a statistical bet like leading the league in passing yards rather than, hoping for a narrative award where people are going to have to vote for him. I don't think that he's ever going to be considered on the same level as the top quarterbacks in the league.
Yeah, nearly 4,600 yards last year, 3rd in yards per game, 5th in completion percentage, great offensive line, as Michael and I have talked about on the show already today, and a bunch of skill position players to get the ball out to. I like that angle for sure when it comes to betting on Jared Goff for a lot of the reasons that you laid out there. Also, in addition to all the stuff that you guys are doing with the NFL and the NFL betting guide, you have been paying close attention to college football as well. Week 0 was a blast, unexpectedly, with the way so many of these underdogs ultimately played. As you look ahead to the week 1 slate now, do you have a favorite bet so far in pocket?
I really like West Virginia plus 8.5 against Penn State. I think that a lot of people are excited about what Penn State's going to do with the new offensive coordinator in this year, but I'm still not really high on Drew Aller, and I think that West Virginia's defense is really good. They have a great front 7. Neil Brown has been, touting that all season long. I think that they're going to be able to stop Penn State's rushing attack, and I like, their group of cornerbacks. They brought in a lot of transfers to add to that secondary in the offseason. Obviously, they've lost a lot of starters from last season. They only have 5 guys with starting experience back from last year's defense, but they brought in a ton of talent. I think that they're going to be able to make things difficult on Aller, and they also brought back 8 starters from last year's offense, which averaged over 30 points per game. And then obviously, West Virginia is just a really difficult place to play. So I think it's going to be a really tough game for Penn State in week 1. I think that they probably come away with a win in that one, but I do think it will be by a touchdown or less. So I think 8.5 points is a lot for a team that won 9 games last year, has a lot of momentum heading into the season. They were also 8-5 against the spread last year.
Zach, talk about Texas A&M. I know Mike Elko did a really good job at Duke coaching that team defensively. They were tough. They played a lot of people very close and won a lot of games. Riley Leonard was his quarterback, and now he faces Riley Leonard. Do you like A&M, or are you going on the Notre Dame team bus?
I really like A&M in this game. I love -2.5. I see that line keeps moving. It's got out to 3 in some places. I think that defensive line in Texas A&M is a little underrated right now. I know they've lost a lot of talent in the transfer portal, but Jimbo Fisher did such a good job recruiting for that team that now Mike Elko just has to come in and coach him up. And Elko, I think, is one of the best game day coaches in college football, one of the best defensive coaches in college football. So this is a game that I've been kind of penciling as one that I really wanted to take Texas A&M. Some of my biggest futures in the college football guide were on Texas A&M over 8.5. I also played an alternate on over 9.5. And a lot of that had to do with thinking that they could win this game in week 1. And Notre Dame now is going to be missing their starting left tackle in this game, making things a lot tougher for him. And like you just said, Mike Elko coached Riley Leonard at Duke last year. He's going to be very familiar with the way that he plays. I think he's going to have a good plan in place to stop the dual threat Notre Dame quarterback.
Vsin.com senior editor Zachary Cohen joining us here on the Progressive guest line. This is the Lombardi Line on Vsin, the sports betting network. You also have an underplay in the LSU-USC game. It's going to be right here in Las Vegas out at Allegiant Stadium. And this number is high for a reason, because both of these defenses were abysmal last year. Why do you think that this could be an under-type game right out the gates?
Yeah, I think that people look at what these teams did last year and they want to go over. It seems like a shootout on paper. That, total is really high, but I do think that both teams did a lot to address the defense in the offseason. USC hired Danton Lynn, one of the best defensive coordinators in the country, did an unbelievable job at UCLA last year. UCLA was, sneaky, a top 5 defense in college football last season in terms of EPA per play allowed. I think that USC's defense is going to be a lot better this year. Lincoln Riley has been talking about how his team is a lot tougher this season. I also think that LSU, very similarly, they hired Blake Baker, a very good defensive coach from Missouri, a guy that built an elite defense with that team at Missouri. Now, heads over to LSU, where there's a lot more talent than there is in Missouri. So I think a lot of people are looking for that game to be high scoring. It's 2 teams that got involved in a lot of shootouts last year, but I think it's going to end up being a little lower scoring than people think.
Zach, go to week 1 in the NFL with me. What line do you think is a little bit out of whack? Like, I have a hard time understanding how the Chicago Bears with a rookie quarterback are a 5-point to 4.5-point favorite against the Tennessee Titans. Now, look, I'm no Will Levis fan. I've made that very clear. But how do you give a rookie quarterback at his first start is more than a touchdown, more than a field goal favorite against any team?
Yeah, that is a tough one because I'm a little bit higher on the Bears than most people are, but that is a lot of points for week 1. I think that Williams obviously made a ton of highlight-worthy plays during the preseason. You all saw, these Patrick Mahomes-esque plays that he's made, escaping the pocket and things like that. But at the same time, he missed some really easy throws, easy reads. So I think that Tennessee is also a team that people are sleeping on heading into the season as well. I just think that offensive line is going to be a lot better. I think that there are weapons there for Levis. I'm with you. I'm not a big Levis fan, but I do think that there are pieces in place for him to take a big leap this season. So 4.5 definitely feels like quite a bit.
So you mentioned being a little bit higher on the Bears than maybe some other people. When you looked at their win total, what was your gut reaction?
Yeah, my gut reaction was to go over. I just think that, the early season schedule for Chicago is pretty favorable. So I just kind of think that Williams is going to have the ability, to kind of grow into himself and make some mistakes early and still win some games. I just can't think of a situation where a rookie quarterback has walked into something like this in terms of talent. I mean, the wide receivers on this team are absolutely insane. I think Roman Dunze, it might end up being the best one right away. He just looked so good throughout training camp, throughout the preseason. Obviously, you have Keenan Allen, DJ Moore there. It just seems like he's going to have to play really poorly not to do something well, at a high level with this team. So I kind of leaned over. I also think that Williams to win Offensive Rookie of the Year, as boring as it is to play, plus 140 or whatever it is now, I still think that'd be the right call just because I think that this team's going to end up winning 9 or 10 games.
Good luck with your bets, Zach. Thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate your insight, pal.
Thanks
for having me on.
Yeah, keep up the good work. Awesome stuff over there at Vsin.com. And of course, diving into the entirety of the NFC in our updated Vsin NFL betting guide. I'm glad that you brought up week 1 in the NFL, Michael, because when we come back, we are going to look at a number of those week 1 lines that are available with lopsided betting splits. In honor of one of those games being in Brazil, Desaparecer Osegur according to Google Translate, that's Portuguese for fade or follow is next, but clearly you can tell I didn't do very well in my foreign language classes in school there, Michael, but I think that'll be see, dang it, my thing on this show is supposed to be that I can pronounce things right. I am clearly, I'm cut off from trying to do foreign language class. High school did not work out for me when it came to French or Spanish, obviously. We're going to hit the break. When we come back, fade or follow is next. I tried. I tried.
We have so much that's going to happen in the next 9 days of football.
This is real money now.
Like, I'm actually closer to the $9 million than I thought.
I don't need to win 10 times. I only need to win 1 time.
Like 2 weeks in a row, and the #1 selection in Survivor goes down.
What do? Survivor in advance.
Don't bet college football this season without Vsin's College Football Betting Guide. It's packed with previews of 134 FBS teams, 10 conference breakdowns, and analysis of every new head coach and more. Plus, power ratings and best bets from all the Vsin experts and contributors. The guide is out now, and the only way to get it is to become a Vsin Pro subscriber. Head on over to Vsin.com/subscribe and join us on the Sports Betting Network.
This is the Lombardi Line with former NFL executive Michael Lombardi. Now here's your host, Stormy Buonantony, on Vsin, the Sports Betting Network.
I learned the hard way last block that I should not be using Google Translate mid-segment to try to speak Portuguese to tee up the Eagles and Packers conversation for next week. But we are here, Michael, and it's really exciting. We're 9 days out from kickoff of the NFL season. We'll have a great Thursday night football matchup with the Kansas City Chiefs and Baltimore Ravens. And then that Friday, we're going to have a Friday game out in Brazil between the Eagles and Packers. And that's one of a handful of games, Michael, that as we look at the DraftKings betting splits is very lopsided in terms of handle. We talked about a couple of games yesterday. We've got a few more that I think are interesting to dive into now, starting with that one where this is a game we know opened with the Eagles favored by 1.5 points, and that shifted an entire point here. 86% of the handle are back in the Eagles in the spot against Green Bay.
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, I go back and forth on this. When I watched the 49er game with the Packers, there's so much of perception that's made, right? The Packers were really good. They played really good. But then when you watch the game, when you take a step back and you're not in the heat of the moment, you realize that maybe it wasn't as great as we think it was. Aaron Jones was great, right? I mean, I think there's no question about that. I think Jordan Love wasn't as good as we have advertised, but he was good. I'm not suggesting. And, you're counting on the Green Bay Packers to have a change in defense and hit the ground running quickly. The Eagles have two new coordinators, so there's a little bit of concern there. But I just think from an overall talent standpoint, this Eagle team is pretty good. And I'm surprised they're not power rated higher. I think the altitude certainly has been something that both teams have addressed, how to play down there, how to handle all those things, because it is different when you go down to an altitude place and your conditioning, no matter how much you train in sea level, if you get up to 8,000 feet, it's a problem.
And this Eagles team, too, Michael, did nothing but add and bolster their team in this offseason. And I think that's a big reason, in addition to all the questions and the lack of change for the Dallas Cowboys, why the Eagles have been bet as much as they are in the division and are an odds-on favorite in that spot now. The Packers, to your point, for as excited as I think a lot of people were about Jordan Love, and he's gaining a lot of hype, his odds are short even in the MVP market this year. At least I'm not 100% sold on what we saw the back end of the year of necessarily being him, because we saw so much in the front half of the season where it looked like Matt LaFleur was maybe protecting him to an extent. He goes on this unbelievable run of 21 touchdowns, 1 interception until that final game against the 49ers. But I'm not 100% sure who Jordan Love is. The sample size has been so small. So that first game is very interesting. Another lopsided handle we have here, 77% of the handle are laying the field goal with the Lions, that now we've gone over that 3 to 3.5. Fade or follow the steam on Detroit week 1?
I don't like that. I don't like betting against Sean McVay when he's got a lot of time to prepare. Now, will his offensive line be healthy? Alaric Jackson's not going to play. We know that he got suspended. So that means Joe Noteboom's going to be the left tackle. We'll see how that works out. That's a concern. But I think this, that was a field goal game last year. It was nip and tuck. They couldn't get the ball back. The timeout cost them. It really did. So of getting the ball back in terms of games management. Look, I think Detroit's better. I think Detroit's offensive line can control the game. I know Aaron Donald's not playing, but I think the Rams usually will play well, and Stafford goes home to Detroit to play against his former team. Look, they're going to have to prove to me that they can handle Puka, they can handle Cooper Kupp, and they can handle all the offense of the Rams, who will run the football with Williams and Blake Corum.
58% of the bets on Detroit, but 76% again of that handle. How about this Seattle Seahawks team? I know this is a group that you like. You think Mike McDonald could do a really good job, especially for that defense, a contender for Coach of the Year potentially. They're up to now a 5-point favorite against the Broncos, but Denver is another team I know you believe in this season. We're seeing 71% of the handle riding with Seattle here.
And the money keeps coming in on Seattle today. It was 4.5. It went up to 5. Some 5.5s out there based on certain shops. I'm surprised by this. Look, I'm a huge fan of Seattle, and I think they're going to be better. But I don't know why this is more than a field goal. And the power rankings for Denver are very low. They are. I mean, I think there's a lot of people that see Denver as the 30th, 29th. I mean, they see them in the same category as the New York Football Giants. I'm not sure that's right, but I think there's where they are, and I think that's why this line is a little bit inflated. I think it's too much. Yeah. I really do. I would take Denver in the points here. I just don't see how, what makes Seattle 5 points better than anyone? Seattle's got question marks at quarterback, question marks with a new offense, a new defense, a lot of new up in Seattle for the first time in a long, long time.
It's interesting looking at those splits, too, because you see 45% of the tickets that are coming in are on Denver, but 29% of the handle. So, people are betting them, but it's the big money bets that are pushing this number the way that it is here on the Seahawks. Last one, Michael, the Washington Commanders are now getting 3. So many people were taking it that it's down from the 3.5 in Tampa against the Bucs. 70% of that handle riding with the Commanders here in Jaden Daniels' debut. Fade or follow?
When I saw this, I kind of felt like opening game, Dan Quinn knows how to play against Baker Mayfield, this offense. New offense, Liam Cohen calling plays. I think, it opened at 4. I think I would take this. I would follow this. I think Washington's going to be an interesting team. But what really separates me from making the play is Todd Bowles is really good at attacking young quarterbacks, really good. And if they can create some problems for Daniels, which I think they will, I think it's going to be hard for Washington to go down into the heat and humidity of Tampa. I'm a big believer of these Florida teams. When they get these northern teams to come down, they can't really be prepared for the heat and humidity. Now, Jacksonville goes to Miami in the opening game. Okay, both teams practice in the same heat and humidity. Carolina goes to New Orleans. There's no humidity in the dome. But this one there is, and I would be a little concerned. I don't understand why – Tampa's one of those teams that nobody has any love for, right? Mm-hmm. It's the same thing with Carolina. That number's moving. It opened at 5, and there's 4s all over the place for Carolina versus the Saints, and I don't know why that is. I mean, I know people don't like Dennis Allen as a head coach. I know they don't like Derek Carr as a quarterback, but what has Carolina done?
And I will say, Michael, with this Commanders game, my initial reaction, too, was that – the Commanders getting 4 and now 3, but I could see that. But then you take a step back and it's a rookie quarterback making his debut on the road in a difficult environment.
Coordinator.
Go ahead.
Well, I mean, Bowles is not going to let up. He's going to come after the guy. Mm-hmm. And your offensive line, now Washington's offensive line isn't very good, right? And so you're worried about that matchup. Can they throw the ball effectively? How good is Washington's defense? Look, one thing Liam Cohen knows is it's not going to be a complicated scheme to defeat when you're playing against the Washington Commanders with Dan Quinn. He doesn't have Parsons, by the way.
Yeah, that's very, very true. Another game, and we talked about this yesterday. We brought it up a couple times today, that 49ers-Jets Monday Night Football game. The Jets have been taking a lot of money here, but Zack Cohen in the last segment was talking a lot about Christian McCaffrey, and while we've been talking so much about the contracts and Trent Williams and Brandon Ayuk, that this calf that's been hampering Christian McCaffrey in the preseason could have a potential impact this season. The fact that Kyle Shanahan does want to potentially utilize him in a little bit of a different way. If Trent Williams isn't ready to go week 1, how might that impact him? Did you agree with that general thought process that maybe the 49ers get out to a slow start or Christian McCaffrey unders could be worth a look?
Well, I do think that, the Niners are probably in a little bit of that Super Bowl hangover, and I think 4-20 over the last 24 years indicates against the spread. That's pretty telling numbers here, right? I think that's pretty telling in terms of past performance predicts future achievement. I'm not worried about Christian McCaffrey's calf. I think if we were worried about it, word would have leaked out. I think Christian McCaffrey's very good. He is very good at making sure his body is ready for the opening game of the season.
Kyle Shanahan in one of his press conferences recently was asked about Christian McCaffrey's calf, and he said something along the lines of he's obsessed with it. He's always thinking about it. I'm sure even when he was walking down the aisle that he was thinking about it going down. It's just it's just funny.
He's not lying. But he's not lying. He's ready to go. He's always, that's all he cares about.
It shows the point, though, absolutely, that he is very, very dedicated to his body and doing whatever it takes to get back on the field. I told you earlier this week, I just have PTSD a little bit from watching him in Carolina and seeing how, like, one little thing led to another thing. Obviously, he was the key to the offense in Carolina, so it's a little bit of a different situation in San Francisco. But whenever I hear something like that, oh, Christian McCaffrey's dealing with something, it's like, of course he is. What's this going to mean for the season?
Yeah, I mean, you're going to start worrying Friday night before the Monday game. I just know that. It's just going to be ugly. It's not going to be pretty.
Michael, it's the Tuesday before week 1, and I'm already feeling this way. I'm like, ugh. We're at that point in the year where football is just going to dominate my personality and my emotions on a daily basis, so get prepared. Fun show as always, my friend. I'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you, Stormy. Bye-bye.
For Michael Lombardi, I'm Stormy Bonantoni. This was the Lombardi Line. Sharp Money coming up next on Vsin.
This is Vsin, the sports betting network. We are a network